The Crawford mansion stands imposingly in Charleston's most exclusive neighborhood, its white columns gleaming under the southern sun. Inside, between the polished marble floors and antique furniture, Shanice Williams moves silently with her cleaning cart. Her dark hands wipe surfaces that will be touched only by wealthy white fingers. Her presence as unnoticed as the air conditioning humming in the background. The staff knows better than to speak unless spoken to, and the guests look through them as if they were part of the furniture. Shanice has worked here for 3 years, learning every hidden corner of the estate. The squeaky floorboard near the library, the loose banister on the grand staircase, the way Carter Crawford's office door never fully latches. She observes everything but says nothing. The Crawfords are old money, their names synonymous with power in South Carolina. Carter, the current patriarch, plays the role of a generous philanthropist at galas and fundraisers, but behind closed doors, his cruelty reveals itself in subtle, calculated ways. One evening, as Shanice dusts the portraits of Crawford ancestors lining the hallway, she overhears Carter laughing with his inner circle. They are planning the annual Blackwood Charity Gala, an event where Charleston's elite gather to flaunt their wealth under the guise of philanthropy. Carter's voice carries a mocking edge as he suggests inviting Shanice, not as staff, but as a guest. His friends chuckle, imagining the spectacle of a black cleaning woman in a room full of millionaires. Shanice's hands don't pause as she listens. She knows exactly what this is. A cruel joke meant to humiliate her, to reinforce the unspoken hierarchy that keeps people like her invisible. Carter assumes she will either decline out of shame or show up in some pitiful attempt at elegance, becoming the night's entertainment. What he doesn't know is that Shanice has been waiting for this moment. She finishes her shift and returns to her small apartment in the part of town the Crawfords never visit. There, hidden beneath a loose floorboard, lies a folder of documents, old photographs, a faded birth certificate, medical records with suspicious annotations. She traces the edges of a gold-embossed invitation that arrived mysteriously in her mailbox, its edges crisp and mocking. The invitation is a trap, but Shanice has been preparing for this game longer than Carter realizes. She opens her closet, where a single garment bag hangs apart from her work uniforms. Inside is a dress, deep emerald green, tailored to perfection, the kind of gown meant for women who have never scrubbed a floor in their lives. She had it made months ago, saving every spare dollar, knowing this day would come. As she lays it out on her bed, her reflection in the mirror shows no fear, only quiet determination. Carter Crawford thinks he's orchestrating her humiliation. He has no idea she's about to rewrite the rules of his world. The grand ballroom of the Crawford estate hums with murmured conversations and clinking champagne glasses as Charleston's elite mingle beneath crystal chandeliers. The air smells of expensive perfume and polished silver, the orchestra playing a light waltz that no one truly listens to. All eyes keep drifting toward Shanice Williams, the cleaning woman who dared to arrive in an emerald gown that rivals those of the socialites. Whispers follow her every move, some amused, others laced with barely concealed disdain. Shanice moves through the crowd with deliberate grace, her posture straight, her chin lifted just enough to convey quiet defiance. She stops near the center of the room, where Carter Crawford holds court, his smirk faltering slightly as she meets his gaze, without flinching. The guests nearest them fall silent, sensing something shifting in the air. Without raising her voice, Shanice addresses the room. She speaks of her mother, a maid who once worked in this very house, and Robert Crawford, the late patriarch whose kindness toward her had been more than professional. She describes the letters hidden away, the promises made and then broken when Robert died suddenly, leaving his fortune solely to Carter. Then she holds up a ring, a heavy signet bearing the Crawford crest, the same one Robert had given her mother in secret. The gold catches the light, undeniable in its authenticity. Gasps ripple through the crowd. Carter's face darkens, his fingers tightening around his glass. Before he can interrupt, Shanice signals to the doors. A journalist from the Charleston Gazette steps forward, notepad in hand, flanked by a stern-faced attorney specializing in inheritance disputes. Behind them walks Dr. Langford, the Crawford family physician for over 20 years, his expression grim. The doctor doesn't need to speak loudly to be heard in the sudden silence. He confirms what Shanice has implied. Robert Crawford's death was not from natural causes. The symptoms, the rushed burial, the missing toxicology report, all of it points to arsenic poisoning. And then, with clinical detachment, he mentions the sizable payments from Carter's accounts that appeared in his own records shortly after Robert's passing. A screen at the far end of the ballroom flickers to life, displaying scanned documents, bank transfers, and, most damning, a recorded phone call between Carter and an unknown voice, discussing how to ensure certain medical records never surface. The guests recoil as if physically struck, their champagne flutes forgotten. Carter's face twists in rage. He steps forward, spitting denials, but the crowd has already shifted away from him, their expressions a mix of horror and fascination. The same people who laughed at Shanice's invitation now watch her with something akin to fear. She remains still, letting the evidence speak for itself. The truth, once set free, needs no embellishment. The orchestra has stopped playing. The only sound now is the rustle of silk and the occasional shocked murmur as the reality sinks in. Carter Crawford didn't just inherit his fortune. He stole it, and Shanice has come to take it back. The once elegant ballroom now buzzes with chaos as uniformed officers push through the stunned crowd. Carter Crawford's face turns ashen as cold metal handcuffs click around his wrists, the sound cutting through the murmurs of Charleston's elite. His tailored tuxedo wrinkles as officers firmly guide him toward the exit, his polished shoes scuffing against marble floors he once owned. Victoria Crawford stands frozen near the grand staircase, her manicured fingers clutching her pearls. The horror in her eyes mirrors the guests' collective shock as she watches her husband being treated like a common criminal. Without a word, she turns away, her designer gown sweeping behind her in final rejection of the man she thought she knew. Shanice Williams remains motionless near the center of the room, her emerald dress glowing under the chandeliers like some avenging spirit. She watches Carter's humiliation with neither smile nor frown, simply observing as years of planning reach their inevitable conclusion. The guests part before her instinctively, some now looking at her with newfound respect, others with barely concealed fear. As the mansion's heavy doors close behind the police escort, Shanice finally addresses the room. She reveals her 3-year infiltration of the Crawford household wasn't about employment at all. Each polished surface she cleaned, each room she serviced, provided access to hidden records and private spaces. The staff elevator became her pathway to restricted files, the master bedroom's cleaning routine her opportunity to document financial records. Projected on the ballroom's massive screen appear scanned documents, falsified medical reports, doctored financial statements, even photographs of Carter meeting with known criminals to arrange his father's poisoning. The evidence unfolds with clinical precision, each piece more damning than the last. Corporate attorneys in the audience immediately begin recalculating their loyalties as they recognize the thoroughness of Shanice's investigation. The final image shows the original Crawford will, clearly listing Shanice as rightful heir to 40% of the family fortune and corporate shares. The document bears Robert Crawford's unmistakable signature alongside those of 2 now-deceased witnesses. The date places it just weeks before his mysterious illness began. Shanice's quiet voice carries through the silent ballroom as she outlines her plans. The Crawford Corporation will undergo complete restructuring. Union representatives will join the board. Employee profit sharing will replace executive bonuses. The family's charitable foundation will be audited and redirected to actually help Charleston's underserved communities, rather than serve as tax write-offs. As she speaks, several guests discreetly slip out, no doubt rushing to distance themselves from the scandal. Others remain, watching Shanice with dawning realization. The cleaning woman they mock now holds the future of one of South Carolina's most powerful companies in her hands. The Crawford era, as they knew it, has ended tonight. Outside, flashing police lights cast alternating red and blue patterns across the mansion's white columns as Carter Crawford is driven away. Inside, a new chapter begins as Shanice Williams, daughter of a maid and a murdered millionaire, prepares to claim what was always rightfully hers. 12 months have transformed the Crawford empire. The same boardroom where Carter once bullied executives now hosts monthly employee forums. Shanice Williams sits at the head of the polished mahogany table, listening as warehouse managers and junior accountants voice concerns that would have been unthinkable to raise a year ago. The corporate headquarters, once a temple to excess with its marble floors and oil portraits of past Crawfords, now displays photographs of workers from every level of the company alongside plaques listing new benefits and wage increases. The changes extend beyond office walls. Crawford Textile Mills, notorious for its dangerous working conditions, undergoes complete safety renovations. Company cafeterias replace processed meals with fresh, locally sourced options. The scholarship program Shanice establishes sends 27 employees' children to college in its first year alone, a stark contrast to Carter's practice of hoarding profits while cutting health benefits. Across Charleston, whispers follow Shanice's every move. Old money socialites who once snickered at her now maneuver for invitations to Crawford Foundation galas. Patricia Winthrop and Giselle Du Bois, who laughed loudest at her expense that fateful evening, suddenly find reasons to frequent the same charity event she attends. They compliment her wardrobe, inquire about her initiatives, their smiles never quite reaching their eyes. Shanice accepts their compliments with polite detachment, offering nothing beyond basic courtesy. Only Dr. Madison receives genuine acknowledgement. The former Crawford family physician, now stripped of his medical license, but spared prison for his testimony, works long hours at the free clinic Shanice established in the city's poorest district. His hands, once accustomed to writing prescriptions for sleeping pills to wealthy hypochondriacs, now treat malnutrition and diabetes in children. The shame in his eyes lessens slightly each time Shanice visits, though she never offers empty forgiveness, only the chance to do better. At the Crawford Mansion, now converted into a community center, Shanice walks through rooms that once represented everything denied to people like her. The ballroom where she was meant to be humiliated hosts literacy programs. The library Carter kept locked except for show holds after-school tutoring sessions. Her old cleaning cart gathers dust in a storage room, kept not as a trophy, but as a reminder. She lives modestly in a restored historic home near the Charleston waterfront, its walls filled with books rather than pretentious art. The only extravagance she allows herself is a small garden where she grows okra and collard greens, the same plants her grandmother tended in a very different yard generations ago. Each morning, as the sun rises over a city slowly learning to see her as something other than the help, or that scandalous woman, Shanice reviews reports from her various projects. The numbers tell their own story. Productivity up 30% since employee raises, foundation donations actually reaching their intended recipients, board meetings where voices once silenced now help shape decisions. The Crawford name remains on buildings and letterheads, but its meaning has changed. What was once a symbol of inherited privilege becomes something far more dangerous to the old order. Proof that power, when shared justly, grows rather than diminishes. Shanice Williams, cleaning woman turned CEO, neither smiles nor gloats at this transformation. She simply continues working, her hands now shaping the world that once tried so hard to keep her in her place. The South Carolina State Correctional Institution houses its newest inmate in a 6x9-foot cell that smells of industrial cleaner and stale sweat. Carter Crawford's orange jumpsuit hangs loosely on his frame, the weight loss from prison food making him nearly unrecognizable from the polished magnate who once dominated Charleston high society. His hands, accustomed to signing million-dollar deals, now shuffle playing cards against a chipped metal table during recreation hour. The other inmates avoid him, not out of respect, but because fallen rich men make easy targets. Confiscation orders strip him of everything: the waterfront estate, the private jet shares, even the vintage Rolex he wore during his arrest. Court-appointed accountants uncover hidden accounts and offshore holdings, leaving him without resources to hire better attorneys. His appeals fail one by one, each rejection letter adding years to his sentence. The real punishment comes during visitation days. His daughter Emily, a Princeton junior, sends back his letters unopened. His son Carter Jr. changes his last name to his mother's maiden name in a very public legal filing. Victoria, now living quietly in Europe, grants a magazine interview where she describes 20 years of marriage to a stranger she never truly knew. The family portrait Carter kept on his office desk The one Shanice dusted every Wednesday now sits in an evidence storage room, its glass cracked from when investigators tossed it into a cardboard box. In the prison library, Carter composes a handwritten letter to Shanice on cheap lined paper. His penmanship, once elegant and assured, now wobbles with nervous energy. He writes of misunderstandings, of being manipulated by advisors, of how he truly never knew about her rightful claim. The letter smells faintly of desperation and the generic soap issued to inmates. He addresses it carefully to Ms. Williams Crawford, a concession that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The envelope returns to him weeks later, unopened, marked "Return to Sender," in neat handwriting he recognizes immediately. Meanwhile, in a sunlit adoption agency office downtown, Shanice signs final paperwork with a steady hand. The social worker beams as she pushes forward 2 folders, one for Malik, a quiet 12-year-old who lost his parents in a factory fire, and another for Jasmine and Jada, twin sisters abandoned at a hospital as newborns. The children watch with wide eyes as Shanice kneels to their level, speaking too softly for the social worker to hear. Malik's hand trembles when he takes hers, his fingers still bearing faint scars from foster home burns. The twins clutch each other, but don't pull away when Shanice brushes a curl from Jada's forehead, the first motherly touch either girl can remember. Their few belongings fit into a single duffel bag among them. The house on Water Street transforms overnight. Coloring books appear on the coffee table, where financial reports once sat. A basketball hoop goes up in the driveway. The twins' laughter echoes through halls that once knew only the quiet footsteps of a woman who believed herself alone in the world. Malik's school science project, a model solar system, hangs from the ceiling of what was meant to be a formal dining room. Shanice finds herself awake some nights, standing in the doorway of the children's rooms, watching their peaceful breathing. She smooths blankets and adjusts stuffed animals with hands that once scrubbed Crawford family silver. The adoption certificate hangs in a simple frame near her bedroom, its legal language belying the seismic shift it represents, not just for the children, but for a woman who spent a lifetime being told she didn't belong. Down at the correctional facility, Carter stares at a cafeteria television showing a local news segment. Shanice Williams Crawford cutting the ribbon at a new children's hospital wing that bears her mother's name. The camera catches Malik holding one twin's hand while the other clings to Shanice's skirt. Carter's plastic fork snaps in his grip as the inmates around him cheer the pretty lady on TV, unaware they're watching the woman who destroyed the man sitting among them. The guard changes the channel before the segment finishes. Carter returns to his cell, the echoes of children's laughter from the television mixing with the clang of steel doors locking behind him. The Forbes journalist adjusts her recorder on the mahogany desk of what was once Carter Crawford's private office. Sunlight streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the subtle changes in the space. The family photos showing brown faces instead of old oil portraits. The shelf of business awards now sharing space with children's drawings in bright crayon. Shanice Williams Crawford sits with perfect posture, her burgundy suit professional without being stiff, her hands relaxed on the armrests. She listens patiently as the reporter asks about revenge. Shanice's answer flows calmly, each word measured. She speaks of restructured corporate policies that lifted minimum wages above the poverty line. She mentions the Crawford Foundation's new focus on childhood literacy in underserved communities, the free medical clinics bearing her mother's name, the scholarship programs for single parents working full-time jobs. The journalist scribbles notes, surprised to find no bitterness in the woman's tone, only quiet determination. When pressed about Carter, Shanice simply states that prisons are built to hold men like him, while her energy is reserved for building opportunities for those left behind. The interview concludes with a question about legacy. Shanice's gaze drifts to the window where downtown Charleston bustles below. She speaks not of stock prices or market shares, but of Malik's first day in math, of Jasmine's newfound love for piano, of Jada's dream to become a doctor. The reporter leaves with pages of notes that will become a cover story titled The Redemption of an Empire. Though Shanice would have rejected such dramatic phrasing, evening finds her back at the Water Street house, her heels exchanged for slippers, her suit jacket replaced by a well-worn cardigan. The smell of simmering greens and cornbread fills the air as Mrs. Wilkins from next door helps Malik with his science homework at the kitchen table. The twins sit cross-legged on the living room rug, their school books scattered around them, giggling over a shared joke. Shanice moves through the comfortable chaos, straightening a throw pillow here, smoothing a braid there. She pauses at the mantel where 3 new frames stand: Malik's honor roll certificate, the twins' first school photo together, and a simple snapshot of her mother taken years ago in a church dress, smiling as if she knew this future was possible. Upstairs in her bedroom, a locked drawer holds the only remnants of her old life: Carter's unopened letter, a copy of the original will, and a single-page stub from her first week cleaning the Crawford mansion. She never looks at them, but keeps them as some keep vaccination records, proof of survival. Outside, the Charleston night hums with its usual rhythm: crickets in magnolia trees, distant boat horns on the Cooper River. The house stands as a quiet revolution, its light burning bright against the darkness. In this moment, Shanice understands the true shape of victory. It isn't in Carter's imprisonment or the return checks from charities suddenly eager for her endorsement. The triumph lives in ordinary miracles: a son who no longer startles at loud noises, daughters who expect kindness as their birthright, a home where love isn't conditional and safety isn't temporary. It thrives in boardrooms where janitors now have stock options, and in hospital wings where mothers can afford their children's medicine. As she turns off the downstairs lights, checking locks out of habit rather than fear, Shanice smiles at the sound of Jasmine whispering to her sister under their shared blanket. The Crawford name once meant power over others. Now, in this house, it simply means home. Somewhere in a prison cell, Carter stares at concrete walls. Somewhere on Water Street, 3 children sleep without nightmares. Justice, it turns out, doesn't always wear a judge's robe. Sometimes it wears a mother's slippers, padding softly down the hall to make sure all is well.